your mind against you for a good time. You just might be exposed to things you didn't know about before. 'Cause we're amateur reality hackers. We are amateur reality hackers. Let's start the show.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Amateur Reality Hackers. Today we have with us Rob Loggia. Rob Loggia is an interesting character that we know absolutely nothing about, and we are excited to learn. So, please join us today on this... Fuck, I forgot the line! All right, and welcome to another episode of Amateur Reality Hackers, everyone. Today we have with us Rob Loggia, and of course, as always, my co-host, Devin. So, Rob, how are you doing today? We were just having a fun little talk about how headphones weren't necessary on podcasts anymore.
Yes, they are not.
Yeah, well,
I'm doing well. How you doing?
Except for the fact I feel like I have a silly headdress on now. I'm doing all right. Oh, shit. So, Devin, I know Rob a little better than you do, and he knows me a little better than he knows you. So why don't you introduce yourself, man?
Man, I
Oh, you're glitching out is what you are.
am Devin from Southeast Oklahoma. I'm a, What'd you say?
The whole system glitched out there for a second.
Oh, yeah, that was fucking weird. Oh, man, I was born here in McAllister, raised over in a little shithole called Buffalo Valley. There was a total of 200 kids in our entire school, 7 in my graduating class, including me. So I come from the backwoods of nothing.
Yeah. No, he's a nice little juxtaposition to have on the show. That's
Hey, well, we just got to come from somewhere, right?
Yeah. So, Rob, there was a bunch of reasons I wanted to have you on. Primarily, I like talking to you. You're just a fun guy. You know a lot about crypto. You know a lot about politics. You've engaged with a lot of really entertaining people. You've got some fun podcasts going on, and just in general, your Twitter posts are amazing. Outside that, I don't really know fucking dick about you, dude. You have wrapped yourself in amazing mystery, and if that's the way you want to stay, happy to leave it that way. But I'd love to learn more about just who you are and what you do with yourself and that kind of shit if you're down.
Well, it's funny being on the other side of the equation here. Usually I'm the one asking the questions. There's a reason for that. I generally don't like doing these.
Mm-hmm.
I think with so much in the world, I'm always amazed when somebody wants to talk about me. To me, that's not an interesting subject. Furthermore, you don't necessarily want everybody to know everything.
Oh, yeah. Totally understand. I guess more the main thing that keeps popping into my head is I know that you were John's campaign manager, and that you seem to have a very libertarian-minded set of politics about you, and also that you seem very heavily invested in digital media, is what I would say. What do you do for a living, if I can ask that?
Digital media.
No shit. So digital media is your profession then?
Yeah, in different contexts at different times, and for different people. But yeah, that's what I primarily do.
Okay, that makes total sense, man. Well, if you have been the mind behind the digital media with all the projects you're in, fucking, that's applause to you, man. I'm the one that does the editing and other random shit for our show here, and that is not.
It's been a long road. I have done all manner of things. Believe it or not, I used to be a 9-to-5 manager, team of about 10 people, and the lowest rung on the management chain, which I'm sure any of your viewers that have been in management know is the worst place to be. And I tried to be an advocate for my people, but also an advocate for the company, and that's a fine line to walk. And I reached a point where I couldn't do it anymore. at the same time, other things had happened to make different things seem more important than did before. So before I had been focused on, trying to build some kind of career for myself. Now the sense became, well, I need to do something bigger than that. And I'm not going to sum up the state of the world for everybody, but I also had some personal situations, big life-changing events happen to me. And I said, I need to go and just do something bigger. So I started a couple of campaigns. And that's really how I got where I am now, which is been a long road, but only a few years, not in time, more in the feeling of time passing. But my first campaign was a campaign to draft Charlie Sheen in 2015 to run for president. So that was before John had announced his campaign, but I knew that we had to have something. So that was before, not only before John had announced his campaign, but before Donald Trump had announced his campaign. And I think that, people, for the most part, maybe caught a whiff of something in the air, but I don't think most people didn't realize the complete radical change in the calculus. And then we know what happened. It turned out to be the 2016 election. I got involved with John, and I am where I am now, basically because I did see it. And I knew that some things had changed and it was going to be a different type of a year than we had before. Then John announced, and Charlie Sheen, unfortunately, was never responsive. And then he announced he was sick and really not looking to do things. So, that was a non-starter. But it gave me a lot of practice in doing things and honed a lot of my, skills, starting that campaign out. It was a one-man thing. I couldn't talk anybody into helping me with that. Mm-hmm. And then, life just, everything snowballs, becomes one thing after the next. John, when he went on Greta Van Susteren and announced his campaign, the message really resonated with me. And at that time, it was not a purely libertarian perspective, although, the viewpoints were consistent. It was not really messaged in that way. It was more of a human focus. And more of an attention on, what has become this ever increasing rift, this crack that's going through our country.
Yeah. That makes total sense. So is it John that approached you, or it sounded like you were the one that approached John?
Oh, I just started volunteering.
Hey, that's the way to get shit done, man. That's really cool. That's so was it the digital media aspect of things that made you want to do that? Like, how did you come up with the Charlie Sheen idea in the first place?
The idea was very simple. I don't believe, in fact, the story that I like to tell is a story about Andrew Jackson. Now we have to go back to the 1820s. Andrew Jackson's elected president. Not only is elected president, but he's elected president with a mandate. Goes to Washington to try and assume his office. And realizes quickly that he's not going to be allowed to do his job. In fact, he's surrounded by these others who have more or less already made up their mind about how things are intended to run. And what he was expected to do was to go along with that. To be president within the context of those guidelines rather than his mandate. And I guess today we'd call that the deep state, but it existed then too. The Charlie Sheen campaign was basically, my qualifications for a candidate were somebody who I thought had balls enough when they were sat down and given the talk about how things were going to be, would tell the American people, I can't do the job you elected me to do. Which is what unless it's put that bluntly, I think that there's people who will always just say, that's conspiracy level shit, despite the very visible, very publicized, very documented existence of the whole apparatus that does it. They still put that into conspiracy theory territory and believe that the president is in charge. That was what I was looking to change. Not what the election was about for a lot of people that year, not really the source of the tension. But I've never been interested much in the source of people's tension. I'm more interested in the source of the stimulus that's giving them the attention, what I would call the root cause. And so I view that as ultimately the root cause. It's just, the rottenness of where we sit. that'd be a good way to start that dialogue. The president coming out and saying, I'm not the president. This is a joke.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a hired face, and I was told I can't do anything for you people that you wanted me to do.
Right.
Well, I mean, it's pretty obvious that is
Charlie Sheen's got nothing. He certainly doesn't seem to have a lot of fear about opening his mouth. And that was really the one thing I was going on.
It's the tiger's blood, man. It keeps me going.
And so what happened, Donald Trump, and I knew that the way the world was, I knew the world was, the country, it was going to be a different year, and there may have been a possibility to get some attention with some boldness. And sure enough, Donald Trump came along, and he used the exact same formula to achieve different ends.
Yeah.
To the extent where, if you look at the coverage of his campaign when he announced, right before and around the time and for a while afterwards, it was almost as if he was this non-entity. He's going to strut around. He needs to do his thing, but there's no way he ever wins. The focus was on people like Jeb Bush and shit like that. Now, fast forward to now, it's hard to even think about that context, given the enormity of what has become Trump and everything that represented on both sides of that equation since then. But he was actually not even considered serious. That's because people were still using an old calculus to evaluate what was in front of them. But that ship had sailed. We weren't going to have that kind of election. So basically, Donald Trump did what John McAfee and I ultimately intended to try and do, which was, with more or less what many people would consider to be outrageous, but John spoke his mind with bold statements and actions, get attention on ideas that people weren't paying attention to before that. The standard walk along, Republican or Democrat, it's just a brand, but they're all the same and they're working for the same people. Trumpkins would call it drain the swamp. That's a wonderful phrase, but it represents something very real.
Yeah, most definitely, man. Well, and it's I'm kind of curious. So back when you were starting the whole Charlie Sheen thing, what was it that made you realize that society was pushing in the direction of that boldness for the next election?
There's really no one thing that sometimes you just have this
gut feeling,
series of events, I guess, that makes something clear. And I had always been in the habit of having conversations with people about the way things were. I had these Monday talks with my one brother who has since passed away. And I mean, we're talking over the course of several years, just discussing world events and, people's attitudes and everything else, that this was building. So this wasn't, I woke up and said, oh, wow, the country's ripe for something new. This was, a slowly and in many cases reluctantly building realization inside of me, just of my surroundings. And I was not at all happy about it. I don't enjoy, sitting here in front of the camera. I mean, it's nice to see you and talk to you and everything else. But I'm the guy, I like being behind the screen, typing things up and making things work. I like building things. I like creating things. I'm somewhat artistic, but my love of creation can't possibly be overstated. And to actually have the attention, just, let's look at what you're doing. I've spent my whole life trying to get people to not look at what I'm doing. I value my privacy. It's not really my thing. I do it out of necessity. There's no way to get the other things that I do seen without putting myself out there. People are interested in that. I get it.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Well, and I mean, also, I think people are always interested in a good mystery, and like you were saying, you've done a very good job of diverting attention away from yourself, and so that's that almost creates a draw. You know what I mean? So that there is one thing, and I have no set plan here, so that's part of the reason it sounds a little rambly, like always. But one thing that you and John have always reminded me of is kind of the political and social movement that was put in place by Hunter S. Thompson. You a big Hunter fan, or that's I kind of always assumed you were, but I wasn't sure.
There's a lot of overlap there.
Yeah. So would you say that you guys are kind of or people in your vein that are pushing for that human-centered, orientation of things, are kind of an extension of that movement that people like Hunter were on back in
John would have taken that as a high compliment, and I think that he very much viewed that as the thrust of many of his activities. For me, it's almost it's fundamental. When we say human, as if we're removed from that. And somebody will make a statement like, that everything that we put in front of us and have in front of us is an illusion. And they say, oh, you're just trying to be edgy or profound. But then when you realize there is no more truth than that everything else is basically just wares that we all bandy around to each other. Call it truth, but is it really? Well, then there's no way to unpack it, to take it apart. You have to go back to the beginning of it if you want to fix it. And so, even look at ethics, philosophy, all of these things. What is it if not just a search for shortcuts? Okay, instead of rather, a system of ethics, instead of having to think about what it is you're going to do, how that's going to result, what the different factors are. I mean, these are big questions in many cases. People want a prize wheel. That was something that was used in the Navy. And they would use it on ships to determine if they had the right to attack that ship based on naval law. And what is an ethics system except a prize wheel? And I say, if you don't have the little guy or girl inside of you that's telling you those things already, therein lies the problem. We should have that. We should come built in with that. And the fact that some people don't and they need this level of direction is part of the problem. And now there's no getting around it. I don't feel, again, I'm more concerned with root causes, not the sources of tension that people have and their interpretations of that tension. And that's not to say that I'm devoid of empathy for it, but I just don't find it very interesting. If we're going to solve things, if you're going to solve things, you have to go back to the very beginning. And so, the Hunter S. Thompson-esque ideals of saying, to fuck with politics, it's not a matter of getting in on a side or one side winning or having a side. It's a matter of burning the system. Absolutely. Its rottenness is profound, and what it's doing to all of us is really not good. The modern living experience with everything that we have figured out how to do should be a lot better than it is. And I think few people would disagree with that.
Yeah, well, and it's always interesting to me. We live in this world where there's many different successful hair treatments. So male pattern baldness, you can kick that right in the ass, but 83% of Americans suffer from some severe mental health problem throughout their life at some point. And it's like, well, okay, so maybe if we concentrated a little bit more on keeping people happy and healthy and sane, and a little bit less on shit like hair and Pornhub, then shit would be a little better,
Well, we don't want to trivialize that. It's a sticky problem.
Yeah.
And you say you want to get back to the beginning, so then you say you want to solve an issue and talk about the things like shootings in public places, rage shootings, or whatever you want to call it. There's all kinds of discussion about what causes it. You strip it all away, go back to the beginning. What you find is somehow this person has become alienated enough from human beings and attached enough to ideas in many cases, although sometimes it's just the former and they wrap themselves in the latter. But really, the cause of it is a profound alienation. So what is alienating people to that extent? And, it's one of those things where there is no easy fix. There are people in this world who I have intentionally alienated. And I wouldn't change that choice to make the world a better place. I don't like them. I don't like the way they treat me. And I don't like the way that the effect that they have when they're around. So I alienate them. And what if everybody feels that way about somebody? Now what? Are we going to mandate that people be their friends so that they're not completely alienated from humankind? What if they're thoroughly unpleasant? Do they have any obligation to work on that? These are sticky questions. I'm not saying this because I'm sitting here with the answer. I'm saying it that I don't hear these questions being asked. And then, so that's part of it.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, and the no, that was well said. It's a complicated issue when you're dealing with human morals in any way. And so For example, well, shit, lost my train of thought. Fuck. Devin, you got anything to say?
It's a good thing that's on brand, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's oh man,
yeah,
dude. This is episode 10, by the way. So we have episode 9 that I'm going to edit up and release today, and then this one's probably coming out tomorrow or the next day. And I think just between these 10 episodes, we have enough fucking blooper reels that we can just cut together a full episode of bloopers for 11 and get a good laugh out of people. So that's gonna be pretty fun. That's I smoke a lot of medical marijuana, so it causes some memory issues every once in a while.
Every once in a while. That's like stop, man.
Dude, your internet is so fucked up. Every time you talk, it's just glitching out the whole system.
I've just barely heard bits and parts of y'all. That's why I ain't spoke a whole hell of a lot.
No shit. What is going on with your network in there? Did you unhook something?
Oh, fuck. Yeah. Dude, my internet's unplugged.
Yeah, well, plug your internet in, dude. Your wireless is shit.
Why did you mention this?
No. So here's the thing. What me and him have, he's my roommate, and then he and I have a audio, like a party company, essentially. So big ass, blow up projectors, PA systems, that kind of shit, so we can throw parties, wedding receptions, whatnot. And so he's
there we go.
Hey, look at that. You actually have internet. Sweet.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, so he does the whole audio side of things and audio engineering of things, and then I do the computer side of things, including like a corporate level network in this house. And so right now he could be getting a couple hundred megabytes a second and have absolutely no fucking latency issues if he had plugged that cord in earlier.
Man, I can make
well done, Devin.
I can make this shit make any kind of noise and sound you want, but plugging the damn internet in, that's your job, dude.
Fucking touche. All right, right on. All right, so since I totally fucking derailed us there from the awesome conversation we were having about getting to the beginnings of everything to restart things for the correction of the country. Well,
we can only restart ourselves, and that's another important aspect of my belief system.
Yeah. Okay.
It's one of those horrible things where the answer is that everybody has to do something, and unfortunately, problems that require everybody to do something usually those solutions aren't easy to achieve. But there's to me, there may be some shortcuts around that, but they're not ethical. Okay. So there's no ethical shortcuts around that. The changes that we're going to have to see in people to change the world we live in any meaningful way. Not just we're slapping on a Band-Aid and we're saying things are better, or, we're going to be optimistic now, but actually changing, the fundamentals of the world as it functions requires changes in people. Because if the people don't change, then they go and do the same thing in wherever you are now, and then they fuck that up. You see, so there's no way to set things up. That's the biggest joke on systems like communism, for example. Now, I may find them abhorrent, but that's a separate issue. The biggest joke is that it could never work. The indescribable flame that we call freedom, which is, at its corest, rawest element, is a child saying no. Okay.
Yeah.
We've all seen that. I mean, you can't extinguish that. We have no more human race. It's extinguished. It exists in every person. Let's put it that way. Even people that repress it to a horrible extent at their own peril, it's still there. And so keeping that flame down would require constant culling. And I mean, we were discussing making the world a better place. I don't see how constant culling is going to do that.
Yeah, no, well, and it almost, so this is actually an excellent segue for the other thing I wanted to talk to you about while I have you on. This is kind of making me think of some of the fundamental positives of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. And so here you have a system where, like, I think one of the biggest fundamental problems with society that was rooted at the beginnings and has fucked things up for a couple thousand years is greed, and it's not necessarily just wanting to have a lot, because I think that if you produce a solid value for society and are producing, like Elon Musk, he has a lot of fucking money. He's also done a lot of really good shit for the world. I'm sure, just like everyone, he's fucked some shit up, but that's I think the value he has earned is well deserved. Like, it's ridiculous for someone to have that much money.
Greed has nothing to do.
Right. Well, and that's what I'm getting at. In his aspect, I don't think it's greed at all. I think he's earning for a value. But I think that most people have been fucking so broken down that they don't understand that they could have a good life and earn their own value. You know what I mean? And so it manifests in this dark greed. People don't think, oh,
listen, their value, even if there's very little to no value, they can find a way.
Yeah, well, and that's what I was saying, is like, even if what you do is you sit around half drunk and you make fucking dream catchers all day. If you make kick-ass dream catchers and you work at it and you do it honestly and you charge what you expect as a fair value for your time,
sure.
Fucking A, that's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
But here's the problem. Greed is not a Lamborghini. Greed isn't even a Honda. Okay.
No, yeah, greed is the mode.
Greed is not a Rolls Royce. Greed is none of that shit. Okay. And it's easy to look at that and the greed associated with those things because it's very visible and very easy to identify and understand. Okay. Mm-hmm. Greed is eating an entire piece of moldy bread when it's the only piece and other people need to eat.
Yes.
That's greed. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And you see, so that piece of mold, you'd throw it away right now. Okay. But yet greed can be applied to it. That's why greed is such a tricky thing. It is not something you can make all of the material accoutrements in the world go away. If you had a wand and you could snap it, let's just say, and make everything disappear. We're all just standing there naked in a bunch of fields. God help us in some cases, but we're all just there. You still have greed if you haven't dealt with it in the human souls that you're left with that are standing there. Okay. Yeah. So this is what we're up against. That's fucked up. And there's people who rightfully don't like greed, but they associate it with commerce. They associate it with, making money and doing well and success and prosperity and having nice things. All of that shit has nothing to do with greed. Yes. Greed is far worse.
So agreed completely. And this is actually, that was the perfect, basically you and me were having the lead into the exact same concept I was going to run with, which is that Bitcoin.
That's why you like my posts.
Oh, dude, you and me have very, very similar viewpoints on a lot of different stuff. It's really nice. But the Bitcoin itself, if you think about it, the people that had the technology for mining, especially after it broke free from CPU mining into GPU mining, that's the same people that had the technology and knowledge behind brute force hacking, because it's the exact same equipment. And so you take these people that were using their technical skills, their knowledge, and their literal computing power, and were oftentimes using it in greedy and malevolent ways, and go, hey guys, here's a system where you can all compete and you can earn some money, but you can't fucking fuck around with that other shit anymore, because your equipment and time is going to be used up with this Bitcoin thing. To me, there's actually something really revolutionary and beautiful about the way that was originally framed. And if it wasn't intentional, it was the most fucking gorgeous coincidence ever, because it's the only existing example I can find for a system that's designed to not fight the greedy, but instead go, hey guys, here's an option to use your greed to help add value to a system.
Well, if you want to know how insidious greed is still managing to fuck it up. Okay. Because now then the greedy people come and they're like, we're going to sell you pieces of paper that say you own some of these Bitcoin, except there are no Bitcoin there. And then we're going to trade these multiple times with each other. We're going to inflate the entire world with the 19 million Bitcoins. That was a dream. We got as many as you want. We'll sell you the same Bitcoin 10 times. The games they always played, the games they played in the traditional finance markets have found their way here. And greed is now threatening everything that the cryptocurrency industry, the people that were trying to solve problems, what they were doing. And And it's an open ecosystem. It's not like you could say, put up a sign that say greedy, not welcome. So here's yet another example. You have this wonderful piece of technology thrown over the wall, and without solving the problem of greed, even in a system that accounted for it, like you say, and I agree with that. The motivational aspects of it, don't try to ignore that part of the human condition. And yet greed still finds a way to fuck it up. And now, in some jurisdictions, in danger of being made illegal, all because of the actions of greedy people. It was not people who were interested in the things you talked about that caused the recent meltdown, for example. It was people who were interested in something entirely different from everything you just described, creating a peer-to-peer system of financial independence. That's not what was on the minds of all of the people who were just involved with the latest crash in Bitcoin's price.
Well, and this is another fundamental concern I have about society, and that's just in general ignorance. Because if people were to take the time to properly research, learn, and educate about the Bitcoin network or any cryptocurrency network, they would understand, coins that don't have a limit on production. They would understand coins that are centralized. They would understand how to use this permanent ledger that exists for Bitcoin to stop from having theft happen or buying Bitcoin that aren't real or that kind of thing. And ultimately, they would follow the very simple rule of not your seed, not your crypto. And they would be able to have avoided something like the FTX situation because they wouldn't have had a shitload of money sitting there in the first place.
If I take a bunch of hormones, I can grow tits. I mean, sure.
Yeah, that's exactly
right there. Without a doubt, and it's good in the sense that people who have these things in their mind can now avail themselves of it. Sure, but for how long is an open question. And again, if governments come in and try to crush this because of the actions of others, we could lose our toys, and then now what? It's the history of humankind, and it's a great example of what we started out talking about, which is if you don't solve these fundamental issues, no clever system, no system of ethics, no system of laws, no anything is going to fix a goddamn thing. We're going to keep barreling forward just the same way we always had. I mean, in the year 1000, people thought that was it, and they all lost their fucking minds. People were losing their shit all over the place because they thought it was the end of the fucking world. Okay, and here we are 1,000 years later, and that wasn't the case. That panic is long gone, but the seeds that planted it are still with us. Yeah, enlightenment, my fucking ass. We're blowing smoke with that. And I'm a big fan of the Enlightenment, but we're blowing smoke calling it that. We should call it something else. that time some guys started talking and writing shit down. But not the Enlightenment. I mean, you call this state that we're in Enlightenment. I don't know that I can help you.
Yeah, no, I think we're about as far from enlightenment as you can get at this point, honestly, just as a society. It's, I don't know. It's been very sad to see what once I thought of as very positive, like, I don't know, at this point I definitely identify myself as like a libertarian, kind of almost Republican. I just don't want to fucking throw myself on either side of the aisle at this point. But there was a time that I had extremely liberal ideas. I didn't think people should be discriminated against and that everyone should get live free, and it seemed like the Democrats were the ones that were kind of pro pot and that kind of thing. And so it's been a real shift in mindset the past 6 or 7 years or so to see everything kind of flip on ass, and me to move from almost leftish to center to right, even though I haven't changed any of my behaviors or viewpoints,
Well, listen, the society around us flip-flops, and if you stand more or less where you have, which is what a consistent person who had thought about their principles before adopting them, and so therefore once they adopted them tended to keep them, if you're grounded in that way, then the world is going to shift around you. We know from studying history that this is what it does.
Yeah.
And these things that were once viewed as liberal, really liberal, conservative, are ultimately expressions of newness.
Yeah.
And so even now we find those labels, they're falling out of their the uses that we had for them. where it's not so much that anymore. Conservatives, it's not so much about old ideas like it used to be. It's about more principled ideas, which I guess you could say is a good thing, considering what the ideas on the other side have become about. And if you compare somebody that would have identified themselves, I'm not talking about what I would call them, but somebody who would identify themselves as a liberal in the 70s with somebody who would identify themselves as a liberal in the 2020s, those are vastly different, and they wouldn't even call themselves that. They'd probably prefer progressive or something like that if they were really at the extreme end of those ideas. Those are very different things. And so what changed is the entire, space that we're sitting in.
Yeah, shifted.
Us. And there's people that flip-flop both sides. There's people that flip-flop both elections. At the end of the day, they're not clear-cut lines. It's an expression of a very real dichotomy. But the fucked up thing is that who's on what side of the dichotomy flips back and forth. At one point, the progressives of today, okay, you're going to love this. In the English Civil War, okay, the Royalists, right, versus the Roundheads, all right. The Roundheads really represented the progressives, the Royalist conservative ideas, the king, everything else, okay. But more than that, the Roundheads were Puritans, okay, and almost 1-to-1, and yet everything was couched in terms of Christianity. Today, fast forward, and really the Christianity and the religious element is associated with the right, with the conservative. It's not associated with the progressive aspect of things. So that it's almost as if you took those people and just removed the religion, and you still have what was left.
Yeah.
And when I say this to some people, and they don't understand that connection, it's like, well, you need to go back and do some more reading. Then there's no way they're about totally different things. Sure, but they're exactly the same. And their idea is that we're all going to be judged by God, for what we have done or whatever, and therefore it's not fair if you sin and I get punished for it because the whole world's going to get punished. So we basically have to somehow find a way to give the apple back and create this perfect community where nobody does wrong. That was the Puritan mindset. Okay,
yeah.
We need to live good lives and everything else. All that's been translated today is, well, now it's climate change. Now it's, pandemic health. Now and who are the ones who are saying it's all about everybody else? It's never about you. And we have to do this for them. It's the environment and, the universe for some reason wants us to behave in a certain way. They don't couch it in terms of God, but they are exactly the fucking same. And just as I find the Puritans frightening, I find those people frightening as well.
Yeah. That makes total sense, man. And I have to agree completely. So I have a tiny little guest that I have to go get real quick. Devin, do you want to ask Rob a question while I wander away for 2 seconds?
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll be right back, guys.
Rob, I heard y'all mentioning Charlie Sheen earlier. Did you ever get to meet Charlie Sheen, or was this just like a little game plan y'all had?
Yeah, no, I wasn't going to stalk the guy. I did an internet campaign and was hoping to get attention. The closest I came to anything, not really creepy, but the closest I came to real world, trying to make contact was I had made some T-shirts and stickers and everything else, and I had a box of that shipped to his agent. So, do I know if it got through? No, I never received a thank you or any acknowledgement, but it was clear he had no interest.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what part of the country do you live in? I'm here in bumfuck Egypt, Oklahoma. It's kind of.
I've always been around and about New York. I've kicked all.
New York? Oh, heck yeah. I've never been up that way. I've been from Florida all the way to California, every southern state, but never that far up north.
Yeah.
Went and checked. I checked out Washington for a little bit. That was pretty cool, but it was just too cold for me.
Right. Yeah, the swamp.
But
during the Civil War, the people that had to go there hated it. They were so fucking miserable. And there was actually behind the White House an open Cess River that flowed.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Bad.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yep. They used to have the plague there like every summer. They had a plague.
Huh. I've been seeing a lot of stuff about the layouts of their roads and everything there in DC and all the little trippy conspiracy crap.
I mean, conspiracy is just it's one of those funny words people now become trained to react to in a certain way. If you get two guys and they discuss knocking over a 7-Eleven to get beer money, and they get caught and they get arrested, they're going to get charged with conspiracy to commit a crime as well as to crime. Okay,
right.
That is a criminal offense that's chargeable and charged every day in this country. And yet somehow we're expected to believe that these two nobodies will conspire about $30 for beer money, but the biggest, richest, and most powerful people in the world will not conspire about shaping world events. So really, to me, the ultimate conspiracy theory, if we want to couch it like that, is people saying that those things don't go on. Right. It's almost absurd. In fact, impossible, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, I'm back. Sorry about that, guys. Had an unhappy little baby I wanted to come grab. So okay, Rob. Now that I am back, I was going to talk to you about cryptocurrency real quick before we run out of time, which is just kind of whenever the hell we want to stop. Are there any projects currently that you're really fascinated in, or are you just kind of avoiding the whole scene as much as possible because of FTX, or what's your current stance on everything?
Oh no, I'm spiritual advisor for the White Rabbit NFT project.
Okay.
And that's in honor of John Mcafee, so I was happy to jump on board with them, and basically try and do my best to make sure they're in the proper mindset to approach the problem. That would be my role there. But I remain extremely interested in the industry. Something like this, I've read extensively about the 29 crash, what happened there, what happened afterwards, which is far more interesting. And in that way, I'm unaffected by this type of activity. Once you have a marketplace, you're to expect it. There was a time when it was oil. There was a time when it was corn. You can't have any type of, commodity marketplace without having speculation, rampant speculation in some cases. And people point to the regulation, but that's not it. There's plenty of speculation in regulated markets. One thing has nothing to do with the other. And you're always going to get, once you have derivatives and other paper products that follow in the wake, you're always going to have these big shitstorms that kick up, collapse. But then the millionaires, they weren't made beforehand. Anybody can get excited in a run-up and say, look at the number going up, and their portfolio makes them feel like they have all that. Actually, millionaires are made after a crash, and that's the people that make an effort, to protect themselves during the crash based on their asset exposure to whatever is crashing, and then more importantly, make a determination on whether or not it's the end of the marketplace or not. If it's not the end of the marketplace, then really what they should be looking at is intelligent acquisition. Because previously, so those companies that were around in 1930, they didn't go away after the crash. Some of them failed, okay, but some of them didn't. The ones that didn't, their stocks were extremely cheap, and the people that bought them ended up making bank big time. When they inevitably rose up, the market began to heal. All of this bad paper had been removed, and things were able to flourish again. So if you're not, prepared to accept cycles, I think that maybe any type of investment-related industry is a bad place to keep your money. My interest in cryptocurrency isn't from an investment standpoint, but unfortunately, the industry's tied up in it. My interest in cryptocurrency, the White Rose Society during World War II, that was the student resistance to the Nazi movement. And, kind of silly to look at now and you say, oh, what would they think they ever were going to do? But brave as fuck. And I mean, they dropped pamphlets everywhere, basically saying this is wrong, what's happening. And they tried to draw attention to some of the unethical things that they saw. And of course, they were caught, shut down, and killed. Sophie Scholl, was one of the heroes of that movement. And to me, the problem of what that's going to look like in the future, especially given some of the things we talked about today, it gets every year harder and harder for something like a dissident to exist. And we know from our past that dissidents are what stand in between freedom and tyranny. When tyranny comes, it's the dissidents who, if it's ever going to be delivered back, are the ones that are going to do it. So I want things to be as easy for them as possible. I don't want the government to be able to come in the same way they'll shut down speech, just shut down their money. Because what we find is that now they don't even need to do those very visible things like rounding people up and killing them. They can just shut them off and let nature run its course, and nobody thinks anything is happening. Oh, that's just another one of those shows. He must have done something wrong. And they don't see instead their loved ones one by one being carted off to camps, which is visible. And I don't care who you are. Eventually, you're going to see what the hell is going on. Modern forces of control are more subtle and more insidious. And shutting off money, I think, is one thing that they've been inching towards year over year for a while now. The digitalization of money more or less seals that unless we can get a competitive alternative in. So therein lies my main interest. Now, making money's nice. Everybody loves making money. I love making money. I love profits. I love assets. I love investments because you don't even have to work for that money. Wonderful. That's great. But that's not what it's for. That's not what cryptocurrency is here for. And I would much rather have the price never having gone up. If that was the price to pay, I'd rather have $10 Bitcoin and a usable network than all of this other crap and $60,000 Bitcoin and these market cycles and everything else. But this is what we're stuck with. So people have asked me many times, should I get into it? Should I do this? And I'm like, well, I'm not an investment guy, so I'm the wrong person to ask about investments. But I will say generally on the subject that if you're not comfortable with market cycles, you should not get involved. But I don't think that and here's where people get, dishonest is when they try to say that's a cryptocurrency thing. That's not a cryptocurrency thing. That's an investment thing in a market with any type of volatility.
Totally. No, that's absolutely standard market thing. And, it's interesting. I think this might be another reason that we, or at least I drive on your post so much is because I'm of the same vein. Like I've had decent returns on cryptocurrency, but honestly, anything I've made off Bitcoin, I lost on the whole FTS project. So I'm pretty well fucking even on everything right now. And to me, it's just, for thousands of years, money and debt has been used to control society. And so creating a freedom of money and creating truly independent system of trustable bartering is a crucial thing to, like you said, kind of resetting everything, in my opinion. And so I don't know. And personally, I've always kind of liked the idea of the dual roads or triple roads that Ethereum, Bitcoin, and Monero play, because you have Bitcoin, which is, from a technological perspective, it's not even necessarily the best one out there currently. Like I think there are other coins that could easily operate better for what Bitcoin was originally designed for. But for something that paved the way and has seniority and kind of acts as an entrance for people into the market, it's a beast. And Monero is excellent for transactions, and it's private. Like I've always been a huge fan of the Monero CryptoNote protocol. And then Ethereum, like I said, I think on your podcast, that it could easily replace Wall Street if it's leveraged properly and the technology is properly utilized. And at the same time, all those things would happen within a system that allows people freedom and allows people to exist without that centralized handling of everything. But one thing that I also really like is the fact that Bitcoin was the first one to come along. And so it kind of was a honeypot and has a permanent ledger of activity. And so now anyone that was using it for extensive child sex trafficking or massive, hauls of meth over the border or shit like that, in theory, there's just a permanent ledger of that financial activity now. And so based on that thought, I've always thought that the real place for Bitcoin is it should be the government's money. And so Bitcoin should act as the spending money of every world government. And then all other currencies should branch off from that. You know what I mean? So then you have your Ethereum and your Monero and all that, and they can transfer back into what is the centralized, decentralized currency. And that's Bitcoin. And the reason is because it's a honeypot that tracks every fucking piece of ledger activity that ever happens with it. And there's people out there that know how to trace everything, which means if all of a sudden you're worried about your government spending, well, fuck, you just go back through the permanent ledger and you can figure out exactly what happened to that money.
Right.
You know, and so I've been waiting for the world to kind of tap into that potential for it. And I think as long as things are stuck in this world of, Mountain Gox and FTX and, gains and losses and that kind of thing, and people aren't concentrating on the real software story behind it, which is that 46% of banks use Cobalt and the software is fucking stupid. It was made by like a drunk asshole that wanted to take down the banking system. And so you literally have a failing technology driving the financial sector, and then viable and improved technological alternatives.
Yeah, I mean, but then, again, so here a solution exists, but if you don't go back to the root cause, what's it going to mean? I've always agreed. I agree with you there with what you just said. In fact, my money I should be able to have it completely private if I want, but the government and any of their money, as small as it should be, that should all be completely trackable. Good luck having that conversation with some of the Secret Service agencies. Good luck having it with your fellow citizens who, if they agree with you in sentiment with that statement on Tuesday, on Thursday in another discussion we'll be saying, well, there's very valid reasons why government needs to keep secrets and that some things need to not be seen. And as soon as you say that once, then you say, oh, it's only about the important stuff, right? As soon as you say it once, as soon as you open the door for that, you close the door to everything you just said. Where it matters, it will never be used anyway, as long as you have that prevailing attitude that there is something justifiable in dark money because it keeps enemies off our shore, which it doesn't seem to be doing a very good job of, but that's what they say nonetheless. The people running massive quantities of drugs, okay? The people massive trafficking rings. Do you honestly for a moment believe that every top law enforcement agent in the world doesn't know precisely who the people are involved, and that simply they are not the people that you go and approach even if you have evidence? Come on now.
Yeah.
Okay? Because let me tell you why. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is simple math. All right. To operate in those volumes requires extreme amounts of capital. Your sample size of people that even have access to that capital is so small that you can't help but know who they are. Okay. And we're given to believe every time they want a new law or a new regulation that we hear the same old canards, terrorism, drugs, human trafficking, and everything else. We have to get it to stop. But year over year, it goes up. We add more and more laws. And yet every year, these industries grow larger. Go look at the numbers. They're not my numbers. They'll tell you how big the illegal drug trafficking industry is, how many billions of dollars. And that number goes up despite increasing efforts, increasing surveillance, and everything else that they basically stronged on us to get. Okay? So what does that tell you? That tells you that the people involved, they're not being affected. Okay? And it's like everything else. They throw a bunch of Joe Blows at the bottom of the ladder, and they throw them out in front, and they say, see, we busted somebody. And everybody says, oh, see, they're trying. But they're not arresting the criminals because the criminals are sitting across from at their dinner table. All right? Yeah. It's what it is. I'm not moralizing. I'm just saying what's there. And so, the best idea in the world is doomed to failure as long as people are okay with that.
Yeah, I agreed completely. And I think you really hit the nail on the head there. And I mean, it's sex trafficking, drugs. It's all the same thing where there's so much capital floating around. There's no way, honey, it's okay. There's no way that they don't know. And so here's something that always blew my mind. One time I was looking up the NSA's server. Right? Not anything dark webby or any shit like that, but just a standard Google search of the NSA server. And, their main server repository, where it is, and how much data it has. And then I did a simple conversion of if you were to take phone conversations and take the audio and then convert it over to text, how much data would be required to save those files. And there was enough to record, like based on the amount of data that they had in their servers, which I want to say it was like 5.8 zilobytes or something fucking ridiculous. It would be enough to record every person talking for the average amount of phone conversations for 100 years on the entire planet. And so it's like they clearly have a cache of data on all of us, and at any point they could tap into it. So the idea that they don't know exactly what the fuck's going on with any specific drug lord or, you know, mafia don.
Well, exactly. And it becomes even more suspect and, if true, inexcusable when you realize that, okay, you know, for a lot of these, we can set a bottom limit on operational capital that's pretty fucking high. And I mean, when you realize you're getting that list down, you're not saying that you have that data on everybody. You don't need all that data. You don't need everybody. 1,000 people, 10,000 people that have access to that type of capital. Okay. There's your answer. The problem is they also have the out front. A lot of these people, their names you might not know, but they do know they have a ton of cash. They do know that the house, you know, you don't go to that gated house with a problem. You call them. Okay. This is how the world works. And this isn't me deciding that this is how it should be. This is just how things work. These are the rules that were never written down, and they govern yet how the world operates around us. That's why they continue to function year after year after year. Okay. How do you, Jeremy, sitting there in your house, go start a drug cartel tomorrow and start flying pounds and pounds of cocaine over the border? How do you do that? How do I do that?
Yeah,
how does you know, Fannie Mae down the street do that? They don't. Okay. So to tell me that the people who do are unknown to law enforcement and we need more surveillance to find them, you're insulting my intelligence. And yet that explanation is accepted every time one of these laws comes across the table and is being discussed. And plenty of people put it forward. Oh, no, isn't it terrible what they're doing to the children? We have to do something. Something, yes, but not that. There's no point in doing that. And you're just going to make it worse for people who haven't done anything wrong. So, no, we shouldn't do it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's it goes back to that whole dance with you know, whether the government should keep secrets at all. You know, that's I don't think they should. And I think if that fucks up our security, then we need to improve our technology and science sectors. In theory,
anybody that's ever been anywhere close to operational security can tell you that everything that they would need to keep secret can be done in ways where the gist of everything was still revealed. And let's be honest, that's the part that they don't want to come out. Okay. And in fact, when we see things that have been opened from the past that were sealed for 50 years, and then it's unsealed, and it's clear that the only reason that it was sealed was so that some diplomat or something wouldn't be embarrassed. Okay. And when you realize that this was happening 100 years ago, 200 years ago, and you think it's not happening now, they do something wrong and they don't want us to know. The CIA running drugs, that's not something they want to admit to the American people. Okay. Yeah. So, you know, it's not, you can, if anything that, let's put it this way, you should be doing, okay, surveillance on known terrorists. That type of shit, we can know what's going on without compromising any operational details. It's that second part. They don't want us knowing what they're doing in our names because a lot of it isn't good. And it would cause a lot of people to ask, wait a second, do I really support that?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's exactly what I was driving at is even the most, you know, important of military secrets, it seems like should be irrelevant because in this day of modern technology, the odds that anyone's keeping any fucking secrets from anyone's pretty slim to dick. And so it's like the only way to really succeed on some sort of tactical international level, in my opinion, isn't secrecy anymore. It's just to be the best fucking one out there when it comes to the technology and with what you have. And so if we're in a world where the powers that be exist without locks and keys or, you know, drapes and everything's just open and public among those elites, then what what the fuck are we doing? There shouldn't be secrets from the American people with the American government.
Certainly not about what is fundamentally going on. And let's be honest, when most people talk about secrets, that's what they really mean. I don't think anybody's interested in the operational details of an agent. What they want to know is what the hell they're doing in our names. And, let's just be very casual about it and say what it is. Because a lot of us get the sense that a lot of it isn't good. And then stuff comes out and that stuff isn't good. So we wonder what else there is. And I think these are fair questions. Yeah.
Well, and I that's falling back to the idea of using Bitcoin as the centralized tracking currency for the government. I think that's a good balance between those two, because if all you can see is the money in these weird encrypted transactions, for example, okay, the government had $6.5 billion here and 4 billion of it went over here, and then 100,000 got chunked out from that 30 times, or whatever. And you can see this movement of the money without necessarily seeing exactly who has it and who's using it. You just know it's going from department to department to department, or that kind of thing. And so by making sure that these wallets are properly managed and generalized, there would actually be a way of creating just the needed level of security to protect the individual operators and agents, while also really providing the oh no, not a thumbtack. Providing the transparency that we need to trust our government again, because that's another.
Listen, that transparency should go all the way back. And I don't believe in mandatory taxes. I believe that we can fund the things that we need voluntarily. That's a belief. I can't prove it, and many people will disagree. That's fine. But let's leave aside for the moment how the money, the collective money, we'll call it, is collected. There's more than one way to do it, is all I'll say about that. But once you have it, sure, you need to have an accountability on it. But I would say that accountability should go all the way back to the person that's parting with it. And I should be able to say, no, that the dollars from my taxes from this year, or my contribution, went to this department and got food for this person, or, paid for this bridge. It should be that granular. And with the technology and the things that we have, there should be no difficulty in doing it. I mean, I'm not saying it wouldn't take work, but I'm saying that there's no technical challenge, I think, to overcome at this point. We have all that nailed. It's just a matter of setting it up.
And
cryptocurrency can do that.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was going to say, you tapped on something one of the last times I talked to you that fits in with this, and that's this idea of having individual tokens for each thing. So that way, if there's a 5% tax or 5% fee on the exchange of that token, okay, maybe 1% of it goes to the miners or to maintenance of the network, but then another 3 or 4% goes to roads or to something like that. And I agree, that's such a basic idea and such a simple thing to set up within the context of the technology. If the world governments would just stop being scared of it, and they would work with the people that actually have in-depth understanding, even if, as John once said about people that are really deep into the whole security world, if those people have, tattoos and crazy hair and, say the word shit a lot, that shouldn't fucking matter. You're not going to Sunday school with them. You're not, having them at the Thanksgiving table. You're trying to talk to these people and go, how does this technology you have an in-depth understanding of operate, and how can we use it to better the society that we care for?
And again, what we're up against is, as John said in his first campaign, governments are composed of people. And the problem is that some of these may be well-meaning, but many of them aren't. And by not well-meaning, I don't say that they're necessarily evil villains figuring out a way to kill us all. There is something in between, and that's a person who's strictly self-interested, and who would put that interest, even if they're not strictly self-interested, above the public interest. Okay, they're not interested in those types of solutions because it would basically remove power from them. These people have spent their whole lives accumulating power. So let's be honest about what it is we're up against. We're up against all the people who are in and aspire to be in government because we want to take away their toys. I mean, it's as simple as that. And I'm not saying anarchy, every man for himself. I'm saying we want to take away their toys. we don't want power to be the same thing that it is today. And without fixing that, I submit we don't fix anything else. It's not that it's not worth talking about, but everything stays more or less the same with different variations. That's the part that ultimately needs to be addressed. And it strikes back to what we were talking about at the very beginning. There really is no shortcut around people fixing themselves. No ethical shortcut. There's always an unethical shortcut. At any given time, we can just round up the problematic people and kill them. But I have always, worked under the assumption that that's, not something that should be a first resort, and really a reluctant last resort. I mean, nobody wants to be that guy. You shouldn't want to be that guy.
Well, no, and that's interesting, because that leads into the concept of dangerous altruism, which I think Hitler kind of fell into the category of. He thought he was helping the German people. He thought he was making everything better. And that's a very fucking dangerous stance. If you think you know everything and you have the right answers and that you're going to make everything better for everyone, holy fuck, you are the most dangerous person out there at that point. Oh man, that's
and of the subset of human beings that are dangerous, among the hardest to spot, because these people will wrap themselves in virtue, and they'll wrap themselves in nice sounding messages and platitudes. And they'll say that the reason they're doing it is for everybody else and nothing's for them. But that doesn't make them any less dangerous. Say, well, attentions aside, you're still a dangerous motherfucker. Yeah.
No, totally. Oh, no, you're good. That's apparently my daughter had something to say. She pulled the mic right down to herself and started talking. That was really cute. But yeah. So I would have to agree completely. And I think it's that I don't know, that corruptibility runs through everything in every system, and it's the root cause of all of it, man. That's without question. Hey, go wander around.
Yep. And it's one of the things that interests people. I get it, in non-human solutions. I mean, let's face it. What is cryptocurrency? We're looking for an end run, as you referenced earlier, around a negative human character trait and trying to put it to work for us. And it's a good strategy, but it only goes so far. And ultimately, if the people remain unfixed, you see what we see now, which is they'll find a way to wreck it anyway. So again, is there any substitute for people, ultimately looking inwards at the things that they're doing that are making the world this way? And let's be honest, a lot of them are going to be very comfortable with many of those choices. They're not going to be uncomfortable with them, at least out of the box, because they've come to rely on their, I guess, worldview so heavily. Now, it's an extreme example, but I use it. I am not beyond contemplation of whether or not the floor will hold me up when I get up in the morning. Now, I'm not going to lie and say that every morning I lay there for an hour deciding whether or not the floor is going to actually be there. Okay, what I'm saying is that skeptically, I allow for that possibility. Okay, yes, it's been there every day, and it's a reliable assumption, and I'll use it. I'll get up some mornings and get straight out of the bed and walk on the floor, assuming it will be there. But in the context of a world where that floor had disappeared, I would be smacking myself silly over making that assumption, wouldn't I? And so that's a very safe one. But then we do it with tons of things that are nowhere near that certain. Think about when somebody tells you something that they know, okay, and they're speaking it as something that they know. How are they telling it to you? And what are they telling? And how many times do you find out that really what they're telling you is what somebody else told them or what they saw someplace else? And they trusted that source. So now they've made that something that they know, but they never experienced it. They didn't see it with their own eyes. They didn't interpret it. They were of no part of it. And somehow they know it. And so that certainty for me is the first red flag. And I'll be honest, I find it in most people wherever I go, where they'll spout facts and it's clear that they have not, forget about the level of skepticism I just described. They don't approach any level of skepticism with the things that they hear and see from other people and from the media. None.
Yeah. No, agreed totally. And that's there's a bunch of psychological kind of glitches the human mind has, like source error and that kind of thing, where they trust these they're almost, I want to call them like placebo fucking news. It's placebo reality. And so they have the very, I don't know, a set stage, and they have the guy in a suit, and he talks very proper, and everything seems so formal and businesslike. Oh, it must just be true. And it's like, no, you're probably going to get more fucking truth out of the homeless guy rambling on the sidewalk at this point, to be completely honest.
Or maybe more, but maybe not that much there anyway.
Yeah.
The most truth is going out and experiencing things for yourself. And if you have a question, trying to understand it based on its fundamentals, not based on what you've heard. Try and reduce the noise and get as close as you can to the elementals, and realize that with some things you're going to reach a dead end and not be able to go further. I don't think, we don't know a fraction of our history. What this immense body of information given that we've collected that we call our history is a drop in the bucket to our actual history, okay? So much has been lost, all right? And think about that. What we consider fact in that regard is only fact because we all accept it as fact. And bits and pieces are maybe provable, okay? But as time goes on, those bits and pieces become less and less. A piece of paper in somebody's basement, that the only place that something was ever written down, somebody's real thoughts about something, disappears. Here's another one. A guy in a small town, Oklahoma maybe. It's happened all over, many times I'm sure. But a teenage boy of upstanding community members kills himself disgracefully, and the family is devastated and moreover mortified at what everybody might think of what's going on in their family. And they're friends with the sheriff, and the sheriff comes and he writes out all of the paperwork to indicate that there was a farming accident and the boy fell in a combine. And that's what goes on the piece of paper. And now, 100 years later, we have that piece of paper and we're looking at it. And if you read it, it says that the cause of death was a combine accident. You'll go and you'll tell your friend, oh, I was just reading about John Henry. He lived in 1922 and he fell into a combine when he was 19. Isn't that a tragic story? You're telling the truth. You're telling what you think is the truth. You're telling what history will agree with you is the truth. But what you're saying is not true. What actually happened is he killed himself, and we have no way to ever get back there. Oh, nobody wrote it down, and everybody who knew is dead. Now what? So there's your history.
Yeah.
I hate to be a dick, but, this is just what it is.
No, that makes total sense. And, I had never really thought about how much influence wealth and power would have on history, but it explains why it's always so favorable to those with wealth and power. Like that's winners write history. They write the history books. That's so, it seems like you're extremely well versed in history. Do you have any particular time period in American history that's really your favorite or anything?
American history is fascinating. Fascinating. To pick a favorite would be difficult. I'm very interested in certain periods, the Revolutionary period, but also the pre-Revolutionary period. The Civil War period, very interesting, but also the period following the Civil War, when a lot of things really became quite bad. Prior to the Civil War, you had a man called Henry Clay, and Henry Clay was a Whig. And Henry Clay tried 3 or 4, I forget the number, times to be president, and the American people didn't want him. But he was the progenitor of something called the American system. And prior to the Civil War, it was the Whigs in favor of the American system, and the Democrats really held the line against it. And after the Civil War, you had 2 political parties that accepted the American system as a given. Just to tell you how much the country changed after that war, along with a number of other things. But that was one of the most basic changes. We basically had 2 Whig parties after the Civil War, whereas before we only had one, and then they became the Republicans. So, it's a fascinating time period, but our whole history is fascinating. A lot of people don't know about the Constitution and how it was, how it came about, the circumstances of it. And we think about it in sort of this hallowed halls type of way, but the people who were drafting it had to pull cloths over the windows and keep secret where they were meeting, because they knew that if people knew what they were doing, they were possibly in physical danger. Okay, We already had a document drafting our government, the Articles of Confederation, and it was unacceptable to a certain type of person, but it was perfectly acceptable to other types of people. When people talk about the Constitution being an improvement, one of the things they point to is the Bill of Rights. But what I like to say is that under the Articles of Confederation, you wouldn't have needed the Bill of Rights. And it kept the government so small that it really wasn't necessary. So it's hard to call that an improvement. But yeah, again, another area where we just don't understand because we're given just the talking points, and the talking points are very rough summaries of the best case scenario, which was really not the truth in many cases.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense. And that's interesting. I never knew that about that period. That's I'm a big fan of the founding fathers and that part of history as well. And that's,
I got another one for you that a lot of people don't know. Most people, when they think of Federalists, they think of the first, political party against the Democrat Republicans, and they think about all of the people that we know that George Washington leaned towards the Federalists, and then had John Adams or whatever. And people are thinking, oh, that was the point of view. And yet we have this strange federalism is used in more than one way. And it does seem strange because they weren't really in favor of federalism, that side. These were more of the aristocrats that were on the Federalist side. Why is that? Well, it turns out that the Federalists were not the Federalists. The actual first Federalists were the people that were against them during the Articles of Confederation discussions. Okay. And they took that name basically to confuse people and whitewash the original Federalists to draw attention away from their position, which was that we should have these very separated, very distinct powers called states that are united in a confederation. And that's why federalism doesn't fit as a concept to the Federalist Party. So they weren't the real Federalists. I'd say if you picked 9,999 Americans out of every 10,000 probably don't know that, and maybe proportions worse. Okay?
Yeah, no, I had no idea. Most
people don't know it.
That's crazy, man. Well, shit, Rob, it's been excellent talking to you. I have to go get my son here soon, though. So
and I managed to keep most of the discussion off of me. I love it.
Oh, hey, you know what? That was exactly what I was hoping for, man. That was perfect. I appreciate you coming on, and I'm probably gonna send you a message here today or tomorrow and see about coming on your guys' show again.
All right, yeah, sounds good. If you're up to some stuff, we'd love to hear from you. I think we're gonna wrap the season up soon, but then when we go into season 2, maybe we'll have you once a season.
Yeah, hey, that works. Yeah, no, I've got a NFT project a whole series of NFT stuff I'm working on. So I'd love to just come on and babble about NFTs for a while and a few different things we have going. But the big event isn't till April. Is that right, Devin?
April Fool's Day, man.
Yeah, that's right.
Fools.
Yeah, we're doing a Festival of Fools. I forgot about that. And so it's going to be a NFT art show that's weed themed. So that should be quite a bit of fun in the Bible Belt here.
Hey, that's one of my favorite days. What could be better than the Day of Fools living here on the Ship of Fools?
Yeah,
exactly, man. It's floating around this sun.
Gosh, and before I get going here, what projects do you have currently going on? Where can people check you out? What do you want to promote?
You can always go to LoggiaOnFire.com. I try to keep things consolidated there with what I'm working on.
Okay.
A lot of efforts going into the No Sugar podcast. So that's taking up a lot of my focus now, but I'm hoping to be hit with a couple of other sort of shows, but not really. Some things that I'm working on, mainly in the realm of VR, but also some 2D stuff, visual based. So you should like it. I see your visuals are constantly going during the show.
Oh yeah,
great.
Yeah.
But really, I don't know if you're a fan of Philip Dick at all.
I've never even heard of him.
Scanner Darkly.
Yes. Yeah. That's one of my favorite movies.
Okay, so I never saw the movie because I won't, because I love the book. And so I know sometimes to stay away from certain things. But in one of the features in the book was this sort of entertainment device that was mildly described by Dick, but basically, essentially was visuals for the people in the book, when they were on whatever drugs they were on. And it was super visuals in some way and futuristically described, but I'm trying to work at getting something close to that. So different visual sets that are interesting that'll go along with music. And then in the VR setting, possibly even a whole environment as becoming like a place to go and maybe think about some of the things that we're talking about.
Oh, that's cool.
Just my interest in VR lies more in that direction. I think it's great that people like gaming on there, and there's something for that. But movement is always going to be difficult for some people. Motion is tough in those headsets. But if you're taking it from the viewpoint of stationary entertainment, the ability to make all of this go away and replace it with something else is actually quite compelling. And I think there's a lot that we can do with entertainment there. If we stop worrying about stuff like hand tracking and trying to, do I look down and see my body? Ultimately, those aren't solvable problems. Until we have a treadmill you can walk on, you're going to know you're not walking. So let's stop trying, or maybe let other people try. I'm not going to worry about the problem of trying to make it virtual reality. I'm not even sure that would be a great thing to have. What I view as compelling is the idea of a virtual environment for a period of time. Yes, that you're virtualized. It's not a big deal that you know this, and you can see some things that you wouldn't see sitting in the room that you were in. Combine that with music, a lot of psychedelic visuals, shit like that. That's the kind of stuff I got brewing in my workshop. So we'll see what hits.
Hell yeah, man. Well, that's if you ever need a guinea pig, let me and Devin know. I'm sure we'd be happy to try things out in the proper setting for you.
Cool.
Gosh, yeah, and I will put links to your website and to the No Sugar podcast and to it was the White Rabbit NFT project.
Yeah.
Yep. I will get a link for those guys and toss it down there as well. And thank you very much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. It's been an excellent show.
Thanks for having me. Anytime you want to talk about some bullshit, feel free to grab me.